In this quick SnapInteract tutorial, I'll walk you through how to set up the SnapSequenceGate component. This component lets you define a multi-step sequence of interactions that the player must complete before triggering the final action. It's perfect for setups like puzzles, quests, or chaining events that require specific steps to be followed. Let's begin. So you see we have a simple scene set up here. We have 3 levers or switches that are meant to represent the conditions that need to be cleared, the interactions that need to be triggered before this secret door will open up for the player. So the hierarchy here, let's start with the each of the levers. Each one just has a single box collider that's set up to be a trigger, so that when the player walks into the volume, he's able to interact with each of the switches individually. And all 3 switches will have the exact same setup. So I'll just go through one, and you can duplicate the steps for the other 2. Looking at the secret door, this just has a collider on it to prevent the player from walking through, and it has a snap object mover. So this component just controls the animation to move the door out of the way of the player. The setup for this is fairly simple. Each of these 2 gizmos represent the start and end position of the movement. You'll see this if we look at the widgets. You can see down here, this is the end point. This is where the door will stop once the movement is complete, and its current position is the start default, which is this magenta sort of color. And you can configure these however you wish. You could just set the start and end points and determine a movement speed. We can preview this really quick before we begin the actual setup, just by going to the context menu here and hitting preview toggle move. And you'll see the door start moving out of the way to reveal our hidden treasure object behind the door. So that's what we'd like to accomplish with the 3 switches. So we'll begin by selecting the door, and we will add a new component, which is the primary component for this tutorial, SnapSequenceGate. One thing to note, as you add snap components, you'll see warnings display in the console. I configured these warnings as a validation to help you in your setup process so that you don't forget to assign certain values or number references and things like that. For example, this particular warning is just saying that no condition is set on the sequence gate. So once you configure the components and you add in all of the required fields, these messages will stop being displayed. Again, this is just it's meant to help you so that you don't accidentally forget to set up all of the required fields and properties. So we'll pause the door setup and hop over to the first of the switches, and then we'll come back. So to configure the switches, we'll need to add several components. The first being the SnapStepRelay. So this is what's communicating with the sequence gate. Each of these levers will have one of these components, and as these switches are activated, these relays will tell the door that this step was completed. So let's go ahead with the setup. So we'll grab a reference to the sequence gate, which is on the door itself, so we'll grab that. We need a step ID. So this is how the sequence gate is able to know which of the steps this relay represents. So we have to give each a unique name. So we'll call this one switch 1. Next, trigger to disable. Let's add another component. We need a snap event trigger. Again, this is the entry point for the interaction. The player will walk up to the switch, hit E on the keyboard, and the snap event trigger will recognize that and then communicate to the relay that it needs to do its thing. So we'll go ahead and add our first event. We will grab a reference to the lever itself, assign it to the field, and then we need to assign the trigger step complete callback for this event trigger. So now that we have our event trigger set up, we need to get a reference to that for our field, our trigger to disable field here in the relay. So what will happen is this lever, the switch, and then the relay will disable the snap event trigger to prevent the player from triggering the switch multiple times and breaking the synchronicity of the logic. So we'll grab a reference to that, and we'll add that in here. Actually, we need to grab this specific reference and assign it here. So again, don't grab the object reference from the hierarchy. You need to grab the component itself down here, grab this, drag it up, and assign it here. Now we need an animator for this lever. When the player interacts with it, the switch is going to play a simple animation. The way I set up this particular animation, I already have an animator controller and a series of animation clips set up for this, so we're just going to use those. The way I animated the lever is I did the animation on this lever sub-object instead of on the root object itself. So if you select the lever sub-object, you'll see it has an animator component, and it already has the lever animator controller assigned. If we jump over to the animator window, you'll see it's a super simple setup. It's just two clips, lever up and lever down animation, and there's a single parameter of a bool parameter called pull lever that controls when each of these animations is activated. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the switch, and in the animator field, we'll drag the lever sub-object that has the animator on it. We'll drag that in, and then we need to reference the name of the parameter that's driving the animations for the switch, which is pull lever in this case. Now, if you want to be extra safe, you'll copy paste the name so that you don't get any name mismatches, but I'll roll the dice and try typing this out manually. So now that we've got that set up, we're not going to do anything with any UI elements. And also for the reset bool value, you would just use this in the event that you wanted to set a specific value for the parameter when it is reset, or you could just leave it disabled like we're gonna do, and just run the default logic. So with that set up, now we need to go ahead and add the snap animator trigger. And this is what's going to actually activate the animation. So once more, we need a reference to the lever animator and a reference to the parameter that we're going to call, which is pull. And it is of type bool, which is the default, so we'll just leave that as is. Now we can finish out the snap event trigger with our remaining events. We need 2 more events. So we'll add 2 more fields here. And the second field needs to be a reference to the snap animation trigger. This is what's going to play the animation. So we'll drag a reference to this into the second field, and we will go down to snap animation trigger and set toggle as the callback function. For our final event, we need a reference to the relay, which we already have here. So we'll go ahead and go down to SnapStepRelay, and we're going to want to choose disable step trigger. So what this is when the player interacts with a switch, the relay will disable this snap event trigger to prevent the player from being able to trigger the switch multiple times and potentially break the logic. It's just a fail-safe. Okay. And of course, I fell into the same trap that I described earlier about typing things out manually, even as I was warning you against typing things manually. So don't be like me, kids. Copy-paste is your friend. So we'll go ahead and finish this out. Pull a lever. You'll notice that each of the switches has a unique step ID. This is switch 2, and this is switch 3. So now we'll finish up the setup by configuring the remaining properties on the sequence gate itself. So we'll go ahead and we're going to add 3 elements here because we have 3 switches. So we need to match the names here. And I'm going to roll the dice again, even though we just had that incident. But I'm gonna type it carefully, and hopefully I won't mess this up. Switch 1, switch 2, switch 3. Okay, switch 1, switch 2, switch 3. All right, good. Now we need to set up these events. So we'll add our first event to the onSequence complete. So what happens when the sequence is completed correctly is it's going to trigger this. In our case, what we wanted to do is we wanted to trigger the mover, so it plays the move animation that we saw before. So what we'll do is we'll grab a reference to the mover, and we will add that into the field here. And then we're going to look for the snap object mover, and we're going to play toggle move. Oh, very important. The sequence gate also supports being able to complete the steps out of order. In this case, we want to be able to, we want to enforce a particular order. So the player has to activate these switches in order or complete these conditions in order. But if you didn't care about the order that the steps are completed in, you could just flag this and then it won't matter. So I'll disable that because we want to make sure that the player triggers all of these in order. So we've got our mover event set up, and now we need to set up our resets. So we have 3 switches, so we're going to add 3 events here. And these are going to reference each of our switches. So we'll grab a reference to the first switch, then second switch, then the third switch. What we want here is the relays. So the snap step relay. What we want to do is reset step. We're going to do this for each reset step. Okay, so what happens here is if the player triggers the interactions out of order, since we're enforcing a particular order. If the player triggers this stuff out of order, what's going to happen is each of the switches is going to be reset to its default state, and the interaction will cancel until the player completes activating the switches in the correct sequence, at which point it will toggle the move. And with that should complete the entire setup, so we should be able to jump into play mode and see this stuff in action. So let's take a look. So one quick note, the UI explainer that's on the door doesn't match the setup that we just did. According to our setup, the blue switch is switch number 1, and that should be activated first. But again, we could, you could change the configuration so that the door, matches whatever order you want. It doesn't really matter, but I just wanted to make mention of that so that, you don't get confused by this placard that's on the door. So just ignore that for now. All right, so we go to each of our switches and we get our E to interact UI, which is good. So according to our sequence that we just did, blue should be switch number 1, but we're not going to activate it in the correct order. I want to show you the reset logic first. So we're going to activate the switches in the incorrect order. So we'll do red first. You'll see the red switch animates, then we'll do green, and then we'll do blue. Now pay attention to the switches once I activate the blue switch. You'll see them reset to their default state because I didn't do it in the right sequence. So we'll activate the blue, and then you'll see all of them reset. So again, I'll activate the switches in the incorrect order. Let's go green, then red, then blue, and you see they reset again. Alright, now let's do it in the correct sequence, and we should see the door open. So we'll do blue, then we'll do green, then we'll do red. Secret door is open, and the player can now proceed. So again, the idea here is these conditions could represent a whole bunch of different things. In this particular case, we're using switches, but it could be items that the player needs to collect in a quest, or missions that need to be completed before a certain mission can unlock, achievements that need to be gathered before an NPC will allow the player to take on a specific task. The list is endless. So I don't want you to be narrowly focused on this just being used on switches. The idea here is these conditions, these relays, could represent any number of things in your game. So keep that in mind. Thanks for watching. You'll find more examples and documentation included inside the SnapInteract package. Just check the documentation folder, which is located right here. See, there's a getting started guide, a readme for installation instructions, some troubleshooting tips, and of course, there are other tutorial videos included here on the asset store page that walk you through various steps, as well as a different overview of some of the other components that make up the SnapInteract toolkit. If you found this helpful, be sure to check out the full toolkit on the Unity Asset Store and consider leaving me a review. Thank you so much.